You are your opportunity. You.
Good morning, Jane. Nice to have you here again. Happy solstice, yes, and once more, happy International Yoga Day. I was saying that without the microphones attached. So, for everyone that is new here, I am Miko. I'm a self love coach, I'm a yoga instructor. I use meditations to support people on their journey to more health, happiness, and self love. And today we're going to be talking about yoga. So, I see a lot of people are doing different things today. Either it's summer solstice related or it's yoga related, and I chose to go with yoga this time around, even though I love my rituals. But yoga has meant so much. It had such a big impact on my life, and I started this path quite late, actually. So at least consciously, I started this path quite late. And I always talk a little bit about myself, not to sound egocentric, but because I feel a lot of times my biggest ways to connect with clients is through my own experiences. And because I've gone through so many different kinds of experiences, Priscilla, nice to have you here for the first time. So, yeah, because I've gone through so many different kinds of experiences in my life, if you know human design, I'm a six line. So I have three different lifetimes in one lifetime, pretty much, and I can very much attest to that. To me, it was a lot of struggle, a lot of challenges in my 30s, or up to my 30s, let's say it like that. And my real shift of being my old version. So I really do have two different versions. My first version was drinking a lot of alcohol, even smoking. I smoked for 7 years, smoked a lot, not just the occasional cigarette. I drove like a mad person. I wanted to become a race car driver. That's still tempting sometimes if I don't think about the environment. But basically, I really had two different lifetimes, and yoga was a pivotal point for me. So I started my health journey when I was approximately 23, 24. And when I first went to India, that was in 2015. And that is where I first encountered yoga. And I then stuck to my yoga path for 9 months straight while being in India, learning from really amazing individuals, yoga instructors, gurus, breath work practitioners, someone that actually lived with monks for 10 years in caves. So really amazing individuals, Ayurvedic doctors, chakra balancing individuals, acupressure with marma points. I don't know. There were so many different kinds of people. And um, when I first stepped onto my yoga mat, I really connected with it from the get go because I recognized that a lot of the poses that I did or that they taught me, I instinctively knew them already. And there is proof of that. When I was a child, I was always putting my legs behind my head and basically pretzeling myself up in many different ways. And even though I was doing a lot of asanas, so a lot of poses, I didn't consciously know I was doing them. And when I first stepped onto my mat, I very, very quickly was able to connect with yoga. But also because the yoga instructor that taught me, the first one that I encountered, she was actually a Westerner and she was living in India with her husband. And they had been living there for many, many years, and they shifted their lifestyle as well. So from the Western world, they moved to India, they built their eco retreat there, and they really dedicated their lives to the yogic path. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, where yoga is not just what you do on the mat. It's actually a lot of what you do off the mat as well. So there are there are different kinds of yoga paths that you can choose. There is the Gyan or Jan yoga. I like to call it Gyan yoga because there's also the Gyan mudra, which is this one, which is the path of knowledge, wisdom, and introspective. So that's really a lot about learning the scriptures, for example, but also going inwards and receiving wisdom from yourself and from a higher source. Then there's karma yoga, the path of action and service to others. There's bhakti yoga, which is the path of devotion, emotion, and love. And then there is raja yoga, which is the path of discipline. And basically it aims to reach enlightenment, and it aims to reduce the chatter of the mind. So you might have heard that before if you are a fellow yoga practitioner. Yoga's chitti vritti nirodha. So this means that through yoga you're able to reduce the chatter of the mind. And this is what mindfulness aims to do. This is what a lot of different practices aim to do. So also the program that I have developed, Opportyounity, it has a lot of different tools to achieve that or to work on that. And yoga is one of those. So basically, the yogic path, as I said, it incorporates the yoga asanas. So those are the poses. And the reason why you do the yoga poses is actually to strengthen your body, but also to make it more flexible, and for you to be able to hold the meditation pose longer. So the longer you can sit in the traditional meditation pose, the deeper you can go into meditation, the less you're able to quiet the mind, etc., etc. And the more likely you're able to reach enlightenment. So that is, if you can talk of an aim in yoga, that is pretty much the aim, to reach enlightenment. In the modern day age, you would probably say more to really truly connect to source, and to release the ego, to release the chatter of the mind. And if you are in my human design sessions as well, you know that the mind is not the way to make decisions. If this is your first time here, this may sound a little woo, but we do have an inner intuition. And a lot of research has been done on that. I've read a lot of papers on this where people are saying that the mind is still a better way to make decisions. Some are saying the intuition is a better way to make decisions. So they are definitely not clear on that scientifically. But the challenge is also to see, who are you testing? Are the individuals that you're testing for these scientific studies really and truly connected to their intuition? Because I believe that if you are searching for such individuals in the modern world, it's highly unlikely, or it's very unlikely that people are connected to their true inner intuition, that they can first of all hear it, and second of all understand it in the first place. So in human design, when you look at it from that perspective, you know that everyone has a different kind of intuition. And even if you ask your family and friends and colleagues or something, like whoever you ask, you will hear different kinds of versions of how people talk about their intuitions. Some are going to say, oh yeah, I feel it in my stomach. I intuitively know what is right and what is wrong for me in my gut. Some say I follow my heart. Others say that they have some kind of an intuition, but they wouldn't be able to really pinpoint it. And maybe they say that it's from their gut. So that would be the splenic intuition, for example. But still, the splenic intuition is a very different kind of intuition than the gut intuition. But because they are so used to people talking about their gut, they may be connecting their intuition to the gut intuition. So many different kinds. Some even need to wait out, so they cannot have an intuition or awareness in the moment. This would be the emotional authority or emotional intuition, where you do need time before you make a decision. So those are the ones that say sleep over it and you can make a decision then. This is great advice for an emotional being. So speaking from a human design perspective, emotional being, but it's not necessarily, it's for sure not the right advice for a splenic individual or splenic intuition. But yeah, let's get back to yoga. I was just trying to explain a little bit of it about intuition and how the mind is still in the Western world often seen as a better authority to make decisions. However, that is not entirely accurate. And by stepping onto the yoga mat, this is the first time that I realized what kind of an effect it had on me. So before going to India, I was actually pretty lost in my life. So I have studied many different things in my life. I studied psychology, criminology, photography, communications design, and just before I went to India, I started my health practitioner. So the health practitioner in Germany is basically the alternative doctor. And you learn everything about anatomy and chemistry within the body, how food is digested, and all of that, like everything that has to do with the human body. Also the pathologies of the human body, what can go wrong, how can you identify these things. And while I was sitting in that class, I was listening to a TCM, traditional Chinese medicine lecture. And this lady, she was telling me a few things that, like, up to a certain point, I believed everything she was saying. And then she said one or two things that I couldn't connect to. And after going home and researching about it, I realized that this was actually not accurate. So I decided I needed to learn from someone firsthand. And before going to India, I was actually pretty depressed because I felt like I didn't know which direction I should go to, because I had so many different interests. This is also a very typical thing for my profile, the 6-2 line. So I just had so many vast interests, and they were also so different. So from photography to criminology to psychology, which now in retrospect makes perfect sense. Might not to you, but it does make perfect sense now, because I'm doing my own business, so I need all of these things, especially as a coach and even as a yoga instructor, to know anatomy is just really fantastic. And so when I first stepped onto my mat, I noticed how big of an impact these yoga poses had on my entire being. So not just my physical body. I didn't just feel stronger. So this was not really the moment I stepped onto my mat, but even after a week of regular practice, and really it was rigorous from morning till evening pretty much. So we had a lot of yoga practice. And after that first week, I noticed so the way that I described my experience of depression was that I felt like all my emotions were in a cotton ball. So they were all covered in this cloud or in this cotton ball. And even though I was laughing, I didn't feel the joy. Even though I was sad, I didn't really feel it as I used to before I was depressed, basically. And when I was doing yoga, I noticed how it was starting to work not only on my physical body, but on my energy layer, on my minds, on my emotions, and even on the spiritual aspect. So before going to India, I felt like I couldn't really understand energy work, for example. I couldn't understand how someone could use their hands, or even over the distance, how they could heal you. It didn't make sense to me. It now makes sense on many different levels, not just because I've experienced it myself, because I'm practicing it myself, and because also from a mental, logical perspective, I do like my facts, I do like my logic. So I do like to understand things regarding quantum physics. So even on that level, it makes sense to be able to do these things. I also did a quantum healing course, and in that, everything just made sense. So, really experiencing yoga from doing it, from experiencing it. So this is, it's great to learn about it. It's great to see your friends and family do it, but to do it rigorously with the right instructor, it always has to be the right instructor. Like everything in life, you need to have um, the right doctor, the right hairdresser, the right yoga instructor, the right nutritionist, the right coach, and things like this. If you don't connect with the individual that is trying to teach you something, it's not going to work. And for me, magically in India, I met the right people at the right time. So they picked me up where I was, because if I would have had my last yoga instructor that was extremely spiritual and into bhakti and um, music and this laughter yoga and all of this, if I would have had him the first day that I came to India, I would have said they're all completely crazy. Who does yoga? What is this? It's not going to work. I can't do it. I'm no, not happening. But because I had the right instructors in the right order as well, I was able to understand it through the physical body first. I noticed the shift and change in my energy, and well, I didn't notice it in my energy per se, but I noticed in it in my emotions and mental state, even though I had already been working on my energy layer through breathing exercises, because that's one part of yoga as well. And at the very end, I did my yoga teacher training course where I learned all about the five koshas, the five layers of the human being. There are many more as well, but I just choose to focus on the five layers because those are the ones, well, four of them, you can actually work on them actively. And everything else just it gets influenced if you're working on these four layers. And by really understanding or doing, practicing yoga for so long, and then at the end understanding the theory of yoga, the whole changes clicked together. So it felt like I was collecting little tiny pieces along the way, and eventually at the end, it just all clicked together. So this was exactly what happened to me while I was studying for my health practitioner. I was learning all of these Latin words and all of these muscles and bones and ligaments and organs, and I was just so confused when for the first 3 months. It was just learning vocabulary, trying to understand what is going on, what is happening. But at the after, there was a point in time after 3 months where it all clicked, it all started to make sense. And eventually I was able to understand the human body, the human psyche. I'm not saying I understand all of it, by no means. It's like understanding or claiming to understand the entire universe, because every human is so individual, and this is why it's so important for every single one of you to really listen and work with your own authority. So even whatever I'm telling you, whatever anyone is telling you or sharing with you, it's important for you to listen to your inner authority and understand how it communicates with you, to know what is right and what is not right for you, to instinctively feel, okay, yeah, this I want to connect more with that individual or less, or I can't connect with what they're saying here, but what they're saying about other topics, that's great. So things like this. In the end, we're all just sharing our own personal truth and our own personal experiences, and how we started to make sense of the world out there. um, so yeah, the for me personally, the first step was through my physical body. And then when you look at the 8 limbs of yoga, so you've probably heard of Ashtanga Yoga. That is the one that is extremely, when you look at an Ashtanga practitioner, they are very, very fit. They're very muscular, very strong, still very flexible, and it has a very strict and rigid flow to the asanas. So it's always the same ones. It has different series to it, series, and depending on which series you're in, you're adding different kinds of asanas. And Ashtanga Yoga means actually 8 limbs. So Ashta means 8, and Ashtanga, Anga, I think, means limbs. So the Ashtanga Yoga path is the thing that we're going to be talking about today. Because Ashtanga Yoga is, or yoga in general, is, as I said, not something that you only practice on the mat. It goes way, way beyond that. It is a lifestyle. And I'm just going to start at the beginning. So the first limb of yoga, the first pillar of yoga basically, is called yamas, either yamas or yama. So you can choose your way, yama or yamas. And it has 5 aspects to it. So this is really about the social ethics. It is how you treat others around you, how you behave towards others around you. So the first one is ahimsa, and ahimsa is kindness. So this is not just about opening someone's door, even though that's one part of it, but it's also really about not harming, non-violence. So this part of the yoga path is actually why I became a vegetarian. Even though I'm not a complete pure vegetarian, I do sometimes eat meat because I personally feel like I need it, but I'm very selective about what I eat. So ahimsa for me, or for yoga, it's really about non-violence and treating everything with kindness and least possible injury or harm. So the more that you practice this, the more compassionate and the more sensitive you become. So as I said at the beginning, yoga is really about, or the yogic path is really about quietening the mind, dissolving the ego, and eventually, hopefully, maybe, reaching enlightenment. And it's also not that once you've reached enlightenment, I personally am of the opinion that you can lose it again. You have to continue your practice. You have to continue everything. So everything we're going to be talking about, in my opinion, is really part of that. You can't just say, okay, yep, I did it, I'm enlightened, and then it stays forever. And I do speak of experience when it comes to this because I've had a moment of enlightenment. I'm very, very, very sure that this is what it was because it felt like pure bliss, peace, happiness, love, all at once. And I always describe it as being a little one of those teddy bears that have those rainbows shoot out of your chest. And this is how I felt. I felt very connected to everything, very at peace with everything, in love with myself and everyone around you, everyone around me, but in a very pure and beautiful way. And this lasted for 24 hours. So it's not that I stopped practicing. It's not that I did anything consciously, but I think it was just a little glimpse of what you can experience. And I don't have the solution of how to keep it, but I feel extremely blessed to having been able to or allowed to experience this in the first place. So yeah, good morning, Christine. Nice to have you with us. Then the next part of yama is truthfulness. So it's satya. And this is about speaking truth, but also speaking your inner truth and being true to yourself as well. So this reduces inner conflicts and really relaxes the mind, because if you don't have to continuously think about what it is you told the truth about and what it is you didn't tell the truth about, it's a very big blessing. You don't have to remember any kinds of white lies or any kinds of other kinds of lies. And did hear a TED talk quite a while back, so I sadly don't remember, but it just comes into my mind, where she was talking about how speaking the truth also heals you. So it is really, the more you can align with truth, the more healthy you can also become yourself. That is also not to say that someone that keeps lying all the time is going to be sick, but I, it's just what I also want to do for myself and what I believe is right for me. Um, then Yama, the next one is non-stealing or not stealing, which is called Asteya. And that also means not cutting corners and not having any unfair transactions. So this is also connecting to acknowledging where your knowledge is coming from. So this goes back to the ancient texts and acknowledging your guru, basically. And this is part of the non-stealing part. Of course, it's also about the actual don't steal from others, whether it's material things or other things. Um, thank you from Utah. Nice. You're already in the mountains, or I think. Have lots of fun. Then the next part is moderation. So this is called brahmacharya, and this is the studies of the Vedas is one part of it. It's understanding why all of this around us has been created and exists, and it's basically about leading a spiritual life in moderation by focus and concentration. So a lot of individuals, they like to take this one and say that this is about chastity. This is about just being not even chastity. I think there's celibacy. So this is really about not having sex with anyone. There are different kinds of opinions about this. So there are some that teach it this way, that say, okay, this is really what you should be doing. You should abstain from sex. Others say it's basically living life in moderation. So not being all over the place. So if you look at it from a sexual perspective, yes, you can say not sleeping around with everyone around you. But if you look at it from a general perspective, as in just having more focus in life, having more moderation, not trying to attain everything regarding physical materials or whatever it may be. Then the last one of the yamas is generosity. So this is the absence of possessiveness, owning less, and only what is necessary for survival. So yeah, this is basically becoming a minimalist, reducing whatever it is you have, you own what it is you really need in life. And this reduces the desire to own more and more and more. So this is the effects of this pillar. Then you have niyama. So this is the next part. So the yamas is the social ethics and morality. So these were the 5 yamas, and now we go to niyama. And the niyamas are personal practices. So to really follow the yogic path, it is about not only about taking care of the world around you, but it's also about taking care of yourself, self-love, self-care. And niyama is about removing impurities of the mind as well, but generally just removing impurities around you. So the first one is purity. And this is about cleanliness inside and outside. So it's called Seshwa. So I have a little, I think it's Sheshwa. Sheshwa, yes. So this is about cleanliness inside and out, and it basically leads you from tamas. So if you've heard of that, there are different kinds of qualities about things, and especially when it comes to yourself, the physical body, and food, for example. It basically moves you when you're starting to be pure about what it is you eat, how what makeup you use. Sorry, apologies. That's my computer updating. 1 second. I'm giving my computer to reparation, this one, so I need to revamp my old one. Okay. So yeah, it's basically about being pure in everything that you choose to put inside of you, to put onto you, to choose high quality materials that also are good for the environment. So also avoiding to buy more plastic or reducing the plastic that you buy. And it moves from tamas, so that's dullness and laziness, to rajas, which is activity, and to sattva. So that's the subtle inner purity and tranquility. So these are the three qualities that you move through when you're starting to follow this practice. Then you have contentment slash satisfaction, which is santosha, and that is stopping our cravings and stepping into abundance. So practicing gratitude, for example, of what we already have instead of focusing on what we want and what we don't have yet. Then we have austerity, which is called tapas. That's restraint of body slash tongue. So it's also about what you're eating. So restraining what you're eating, restraining your words, not having to speak everything out that comes to your mind. It's about also the austerity of the mind and thoughts and actions. And in spirit, leading to a simple life, basically, which then leads to willpower and is reducing or increasing your threshold for pain. The next one, we have self-study, swadhyaya, swadhyaya, which is about self-study. So it's really about becoming the observer in a lot of ways and studying yourself. But it's also about studying the scriptures. So this can be the Vedas, for example. This can be the Bhagavad Gita. This can be Patanjali Yoga Sutras. This can be anything that is very ancient in nature. So even in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras or these 8 limbs of yoga, I personally have a few things which I still cannot connect to, or I may never be able to connect to. So if, for example, this would be connected to, so brahmacharya, if that would truly be connected to celibacy, I wouldn't be able to connect to this yet or ever. I don't know. I'm not going to make final proclamations, but I think it's always important to keep an open mind, especially after all the transformations that I have experienced for myself. One thing I never say is never. No, I know that this is contradicting, but it's just anything can happen in life. It's really crazy. Study of the self, and that basically reduces the ego. So if you've started to practice mindfulness, if you started to really reflect on yourself, you are reducing, and then you want to make changes about that, you are already reducing your ego. You are becoming more aware. For me, self-study, I very much relate to that. The next one is surrender. That's another one that is difficult to pronounce. Ishvara Pranidhana. So Pranidhana. There we go. Which is the laws that govern the universe. And it's basically about surrendering to them. So surrender to the higher self, higher power, and accepting that everything happens for a reason, which also shifts our perspective from the chatter of the mind, and therefore it helps to dissolve our ego. So these are the two first branches, and I forgot to show the little cards here, but Yama and Niyama, these are the two cards from the Yogic Path, which is, it was my first oracle deck, and I very much connected to it. By now, I do feel a few things are missing, or it's basically, for me, this deck, it's gorgeous. I love it. I still love it, and I still use it sometimes. Not trying to do any advertisement because, well, I'm not getting any money from that, but if you do want to buy it, I highly recommend it. But it is a very physical deck, if that makes sense. So physical layer, if you're still very connected to the physical aspects of life, and even though it does have a lot of gods and goddesses in there as well, it talks about the yogic path. Yeah, it's a gorgeous deck. It does help to bring a little bit of the physical element into a reading if you're using oracle cards. And it does give a direction. So I do like it, but I by now mix it with other oracle decks. So the next one is asana. And this is the poses. So the asana or the asanas is about the poses that you do on the mat. And that is very much connected to also the energy layer, because as I said, when I first stepped on the mat, I may have seen the results in my physical body. I may have felt stronger. I may have sat straighter. I may have felt more confident, but I was feeling it on my energy layer as well. And that is because every single asana is connected to the chakras. So I use asanas with my clients a lot when I want to unblock certain areas. I also use breath work, which is the next pillar that we're going to be talking about, pranayama or pranayam. But it's really, really powerful stuff. So understanding not only the anatomy of a pose, so what you can do when someone has a stiff back or when someone needs to be more flexible in certain areas, or shoulder pains or neck pains, etc., etc., understanding the pros and contras of a pose, because there are pros and contras. There are contraindications for certain individuals. But really also understanding which chakra is being worked on when you're using different kinds of asanas. That is so powerful. I think I still have a yoga sequence. So if you feel, so the first parts that you work on when you're working on chakras is the lower three chakras, because that is also connected to the physical layer. So the physical aspects of life, the material aspects of life. And if you want to do the yoga sequence, I have one on my YouTube channel where we really work on the lower three chakras. It's underneath my favorite willow tree. I set up the camera in there. So give it a try with a guided meditation for the lower chakras as well. Then, as I said, we have pranayam or pranayama, and this is about breath, breathing. So in the Opportунity program that I developed, I have this as one of the 12 major pillars. That's how important I believe that breath work is. It's not just breathing in and out through the nose on a just without focusing on it. It's really, breath work is about focus. It's about control. It's about flow. It's about timing. It's about breath is very connected to your emotions. So the more you're able to work on your breathing, the more that you're able to control your breathing, the better you're able to control your emotions. And I want to be very clear here. I'm not saying that controlling your emotions means that you're burying your emotions or that you're not acknowledging your emotions. That's a difference. There's a big difference here. It's very important to acknowledge your emotions and to work through your emotions, but it's not necessary for you to react to every single emotion out there. And that is going to save you from a lot of challenges with other people. Hi, Elena. Nice to have you here. No worries. I'm going to actually be uploading this episode to my YouTube channel because I was asked to do so. And yes, I'm going to make it happen. Warrnambool, Warrnambool, Victoria. Nice to have you here, Prue. Perfect. So, if you just think about it for one moment regarding the breath and the emotions, if you think about when you're sad or when you're happy, when you're laughing, when you're crying, how does your breath change through all of those things? Because your breath does change. And with low frequency emotions like sadness, like anger, like frustration, things like that, your breath becomes more shallow and often faster. So it often becomes more shallow and often becomes faster. When you're stressed, for example, when you're anxious, things like this. When you are in a high frequency emotion, your breath becomes deeper and it becomes longer a lot of times. So if you can see that the emotions have an effect on your breath, you can also understand that the breath has an impact on your emotions. And this also, of course, goes hand in hand with mindfulness, because the more you practice mindfulness, you're also going to become aware of where your emotions sit in your body. Where is it triggered? And I don't think I have these meditations on here yet, on the Inside Timer platform. But if you take a look at my Opportunity podcast, so I will try to upload these meditations on here as well at some point. I just have so much in the pipeline at the moment. So if you could do me this one favor and go to my podcast if you want to try it. There are, I think, it's been a while that I recorded those, but I think it's either 2 or 3 episodes where you can feel emotions in your body. So I'm guiding you through different kinds of emotions. And in your body, within your body, you're going to feel a reaction. So somewhere you're going to feel where you're triggered or where you're experiencing the emotion. And it's different for everyone. So, well, some people may feel it in the same areas, but the way that it also moves, the emotions move through your body, it's very interesting to observe that. So these 2 or 3 meditations can help you experience that. But in general, just practicing mindfulness is going to help you to recognize these triggers more and more frequently. So you can catch yourself, and you can be, if you're in a situation where someone seems to be triggering you, you can be like, give me a moment. I just need to go for a quick walk, and then we can talk about this again. And it will take a while to reach that point, but it's so worth it. When you first do this, you're going to feel so proud of yourself, and I'm going to be so proud of you. And this is through mindfulness and through breathing exercises. Of course, it's also through meditation and through yoga and through many different things, but practicing breathing exercises and mindfulness is one of the steps that make a very big impact in this. Then we have oh, where is it? Pratyahara. I don't have the card for that one. I put it away again. So this is Pratyahara, and this is withdrawal of senses. So after pranayama comes pratyahara, and that is withdrawal of the senses. So this is bringing the awareness inwards and not being so busy with the things around you, and recognizing within you what is happening. So for example, this is still pretty similar to the one that we talked to regarding this one aspect, that it is similar about recognizing what is happening within you. But this is where yoga becomes really a great tool for that as well. Because when you practice, for example, Ashtanga Yoga, or when you practice poses over and over again. So Some people like to practice the same thing over and over again, exactly the same sequence. So, for example, if you're an Ashtanga practitioner, then you're practicing the same poses over and over and over again. You have your fixed sequence, and that in itself brings you into a trance. So there's also a reason why people do this. And if you're someone that prefers to do different things, try to at least have one pose that you do every single day, because this one pose, you can then focus on that pose and feel how it feels and see how it feels differently every day. Because if you're holding, for example, let's say Warrior Two, if you're holding Warrior Two one day, you may feel there's some tension in your foot, or you feel like you're not as straight as normal, or as on other days, or you feel like there's more pain in some area than another. And when I talk about pain in yoga poses, it should only be tiny, tiny little bit. It shouldn't be excruciating pain. So if you ever feel excruciating pain, don't do the pose, no matter which teacher is telling you this. Even in India, they sometimes really push you into the pose, and that's not the way to go. But if you want to know more on this, then check out the Your Body, Your Yoga book. Fantastic book when it comes to this. Thank you, Elena. So, yes, practice one yoga pose every single day. Do the rest as free flow as you want, but observe yourself in this one pose and see how it feels. And this is really going inward. So while you're physically doing something, this is still your body, and this is still observing you within, instead of, and this is the reason why you practice this, because it helps you be less focused on the outside world. So having things trigger you on the outside world. Again, the more that you acknowledge and recognize what is happening within you, the more you're able to stop yourself from overreacting in situations. So the next one is dharana. Dharana. I really need to practice my Sanskrit. So this pillar is about focusing the mind before trying to still the mind. So this is a focus on something. So there are different kinds of meditations that you can practice. Just like there are so many different kinds of yoga, there are also so many different kinds of meditations. And if you just look at the tantric meditations. So there's a great teacher on here, actually, on Inside Timer, which is called Beyonce, and he has a whole sequence of the 108 different kinds of breath work and meditations, and it's very, very vast. So do check it out. And no, Tantra is not just about physical things like sexual aspects. It's actually not connected to that in the first place at all. It has something to do with the connection of energies. And he talks about these different kinds of ways to channel your energy, to hone in on your energy, to harness that energy. It's very, very good. So do check him out on he's on here, Beyonce. I think it's how you spell it. Let me just, before I say something, Beyonce. He's on YouTube, where you can find all of his things. Yes, that's how you spell it. So, and he's also on here. I just don't know if he has his 108 yoga sequence on there. And he always, with every exercise that he shows you, he always has a story about it. So it's really, I highly recommend it. So yeah, dharana is about having a focus. So Trataka meditation, for example, is one of those focuses where you would stare at the flame of a candle. Another one is to look at the sunset or sunrise, but this is really just for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour when the sun is rising. So this is not full sunrise, full sun in the sky where you should be staring at the sun for 20 minutes. It's really the moment that the sun rises for approximately 20 minutes. That's that's safe to look at the sun. At least this is what gurus and yoga practitioners, they often tell you. So this is when the sun rises and when the sun sets that you can do that. It's like staring into the light of a flame, but please don't stare at the sun while it's just out. I feel like I needed to say this disclaimer. So yeah, this is a straight focus. And as I said, sometimes this focus is on an external object. So you can even do this like with this great microphone that I had. I could just stare at it and continuously bring my focus back to this microphone or to the flame. So continuously bringing my focus back. It's also something that you can, of course, do with your breath, continuously focusing on the in and out flow of your breath. And this basically reduces your chatter of the mind, or you learn to tune it out more. So this is what we're trying to do, where you're really trying to hone in and control your mind. Don't let it monkey about and jump all over the place. So this is why you're practicing dharana, because you want to bring focus to your mind. The next one is called dhyana. So this is meditation. And when I talk about meditation in this sense, it is about inner space of stillness. So there is a difference between dharana and dhyana, because the inner sense of stillness is actually stillness and silence. And we're trying to expand this stillness and silence. But first, we need to do all of those steps that I mentioned before. So everything up to now, you on the yogic path, you would be practicing everything up to now before you would take that next step, or before you would even be able to take that next step. If you haven't taken care of your social surroundings, if you haven't taken care of your environment, if you haven't taken care of your own well-being and self-care, and if you haven't practiced asanas, you're not going to be able to sit in the meditative pose in the first place for a prolonged amount of time. The good news is that back in the day, you would have had to sit much, 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 much longer in a meditative pose. By now, apparently, what I've heard is that it's getting easier for us to connect to source, even though there are also others that are going to tell you about 5D and just a lot of environmental challenges that are blocking us again from connecting to source. Also, the water being, there are lots of different kind of theories out there. But in theory, it is easier for us to connect to source, and we don't have to sit in a meditative pose. So when I talk about the meditative pose, I talk about lotus pose. And the lotus pose has a reason, because you're really grounding yourself to the ground. Your coccyx is on the floor, and you should be practicing it on meditation on the ground. Sadhguru is also always sitting with one leg up, because it's kind of stimulating and pushing on that energy. So on your root chakra, on your portal, and you have a straight spine when you're sitting in lotus pose. At least that's what you aim to have. So the stronger your body, the more that you the strengthen it through asanas. And of course, in the modern day age, you can also strengthen it through HIIT training and things like this. But the asanas are really, really very connected to the chakras. So it does make sense. And I did forget to mention that mantras become quite important when it also comes to one of the other elements. So this was when you were practicing the self-study, swadhyaya, in the niyama. This is where the mantras come in. And also the mantras, the sound of the mantras, they're also connected to the chakras. So just putting it all together, really helps you connect more easily to source. So yeah, Dhyana is about finding inner stillness. And there are also other individuals that say that it's impossible to quiet the mind completely. I don't believe that is necessarily true. I believe that for some individuals it is possible. And for others, it would require a lot more work. I'm not sure that it is possible for everyone, but I do know for a fact that it is possible to silence the mind. And when you look at it from a human design perspective, there are people that also are more or less likely to be able to do that. It's whale season here in Victoria. Oh my God. So do you hear those sounds? Like when you're close to the ocean, can you hear it? Or in the ocean? Oh my God. I love the sound of whales. Sorry, Prue just said that it's whale season here in Victoria. But whale sounds is, oh, I really love it. I love to use that in my meditations. So then we have samadhi. So samadhi is about the unity, to uniting your awareness with higher consciousness, and this is essentially enlightenment. So you're still alive, you're still in your physical body, but you're so open, so present, so aware, and so connected that you can connect to source. And this for me is what enlightenment means, to really being able to do that on a consistent basis, like being able to connect to it and to also retrieve information from it, to understand what is going on past, present, and future. So it's, yeah, samadhi is what, if you could call an aim to yoga, then this would be the aim of yoga, to reach enlightenment, to reach samadhi. And beyond that, it would be you losing your physical body. So reconnecting with source is the ultimate ascension to source. So all of that being said, the way that you know how well your yoga practice is going, that would be how long you can sit in stillness and in meditation. So a lot of people may have been practicing yoga for many, 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 many years, but they cannot sit still and sit in meditation for more than maybe 10 minutes. So this is something that I read somewhere and that I really connect with it as well. When you really follow all of these things, you do have somewhat of a way to measure your success, at least to some extent. And this would be one of the ways. Of course, you would also get it reflected back from your environment. People would be you would attract more of the right people, you would repel more of the wrong people that are wrong for you, not generally wrong, but that are not correct for you. You would receive more and more and more compliments about yourself, which are genuinely heartfelt and which talk more about your soul. It's not necessarily, wow, you're beautiful, but more of a, wow, you have a really fascinating glow about you, or something like this. So these are also ways to see um, how you're moving along on your journey. You can't hear them, you can see them when they come out of the water. Wow. Also beautiful, Prue, about the whales. Thank you very much, Elena. Appreciate it. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. So yes, I will be putting this episode on YouTube. And if you do have anyone that you know who would be interested in this, then do let them know. It was my pleasure to be here with you today. I do hope you celebrate the longest day of the year adequately. You give a little bit back to Mother Nature as well. Um, Maybe water your plants in the garden. No, you probably do that anyways. But just, yeah, give some love to Mother Nature as well. And maybe because it's International Yoga Day, and even if you've never done yoga before, maybe you go try it out somewhere in some yoga studio. If it is your first time, then please practice with a professional coach or yoga instructor. I'm not a big fan of people going online. I've heard horrible stories from individuals during Corona that tried yoga and that just overestimated themselves. It's possible to do it, but yoga, even one pose can be just adjusted and corrected in so many different ways. It's crazy. Even mountain pose, if you just stand there, you have no idea how many different ways mountain pose can be done and corrected, and how tiring that pose is. If you haven't practiced with an Iyengar yoga instructor, then you may not know how difficult mountain pose is. Even in Iyengar himself, he said that doing mountain pose, perfecting mountain pose, is something that he would be working on for the rest of his life. It looks so simple, but it's not. So yeah, if you do want, I do have a PDF on my website with 22 different yoga poses where I have a little bit of adjustments written on there. So this can also help you to improve and reflect on the yoga poses that you do. It's 22 of the most important yoga poses, or the basic yoga poses, basically. Okay, now I'm going to stop talking. So have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you everyone for being here. I very much appreciate you. And I hope to see you next time. Bye everyone. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jane. Thank you. Bye.
You are your opportunity. You, yeah, you.